Understandable. Okay.
But you're going to say who's on the side of Ukraine, and libertarians aren't. See, we would disagree with you completely because we're on the side of let's get less Ukrainians killed.
The cowardice and unwilling to fight back against a bully like this on the geopolitical level will lead to much more conflict and war in the future. The question is, how much does it hurt Russia?
Yeah,
to gain that land, because, and this is the larger point.
But
right?
this is no, hold on. I asked the question. This is where you're lawful evil. This is where you're like, we don't care how many Ukrainians we sacrifice because we have to make Russia pay a cost to adhere to the global order.
Should I be familiar with the Hannibal Doctrine?
So Hannibal Doctrine. So it refers to when basically after the Battle of Cannae, Hannibal captured a bunch of Romans and then took them to the gates of Rome and was like, "All right, go ahead and pay us a huge ransom and etc."
Now hold on though. Have you been to Rome?
Have you been there? So that is one thing I will say as like a Douglas Murray fan is I do now have to at least hearken with the fact that there is a chance that some of what I really liked about him was not the substance of his arguments, but just how goddamn good he sounds saying it because he's English and gay.
Just being a snarky gay Englishman.
Yeah, dude, I mean that's a powerful combo. Snarky English gay.
It is a buff. It's just a conversational buff for sure. Yeah, I mean that. The Dave Smith, Douglas Murray conversation is just a funny dynamic with you and I because, like, I have been a Douglas Murray hater for a long time because he's neoconservative and generally against most things, I believe, right?
Yeah.
But I would definitely side a lot more with Douglas Murray in that debate than I would Dave Smith. Although not entirely. Like, I wouldn't say that I'm like an Israel apologist to the level that I think he is.
Yeah.
But I do genuinely like. I think Dave Smith is a great comedian and pretty terrible at like political takes, right?
I mean, I think Dave's pretty good at presenting the argument that is morally easier to defend, and I think even he would tell you that he's not this fantastic debater, but that it is easier to be on the side that's like, hey, maybe we should quit blowing up children in places.
Yeah, but I don't think most people would disagree with that. They are just bad at making that point.
No,
but like I think the truth of it though is that the simplistic view of like killing children is bad, which again I agree with. Killing children is bad.
Oh God.
But like it doesn't. Wow, I died too. We suck.
All right. Yeah. We're just. Maybe we have to pay attention.
Cut it all. Restart the stream.
So, Mike, having been unjustly murdered, how do you feel about? Yeah, we're gonna stop right there. We're not gonna finish that sentence.
Yep, and we're done.
Nothing more there. Nothing more there to see.
Yep.
Which we got.
We're pro gamers if we edit
gamers.
correctly.
Yeah, that's exactly it. No, but because the argument is it's like, oh, we don't have any other choice than to do what we're doing. And I wouldn't even say it's like the anti-Israel side. I think it's like the we're not doing everything we can to avoid civilian casualties side, and that's clearly obvious. There's one side of a government in Israel that's very right wing, and seems to have a whole lot of excuses that always lead to why we need to kill more people and take more land. And I think that's like a pretty easy point to defend, because if you're me and you're libertarian, it's like, yeah, I don't like it. And if you're kind of left wing and you really have trouble defending a right wing government.
Well, this is where I'm gonna hard disagree with you. Like that all I agree with. But the leading up to the most recent election and electing Trump, and then saying that Trump was going to be this candidate for peace and that he was going to, be the one to stand up to Israel and all of this.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think who said that.
Like, get the fuck out of here.
I'm gonna ask you to tell me who said that, because it definitely wasn't
Dave Smith.
No, you are blatantly wrong. The Dave Smith argument was specifically Trump and Biden are both going to be absolutely horrible on Israel.
No. Trump was the anti-war candidate.
Yeah, for sure, but that's more towards
You're telling
Ukraine
me Trump
was
not the anti-war candidate?
No, yeah, he was, but both Dave Smith, everyone in the Libertarian Party said he's going to be terrible on Israel, but both sides are going to be terrible on Israel. So we're hoping that we get an end to the Ukraine war and that we get Russ freed from prison. So I mean, if you're saying that there is a clip anywhere on the internet that Dave Smith was saying Trump was going to be good on Israel and stand up to Netanyahu, that is not the case. Because the only reason I understand the thing about the Miriam Adelson campaign benefits is because of Dave Smith, and I mean in Breaking Points a little bit too. But it was always established that like Trump's going to be terrible on Israel. We just thought maybe it wouldn't be as terrible, but it's terrible. Like that's the
Okay, so I mean, whatever. So yeah, he wouldn't be as terrible. Like he's the better Israeli candidate. Like let's not. I feel like we're really walking back the goalposts now.
No.
Where we're at. You know what I mean?
You're
but I'm sure I can
saying.
go back and find some clips, and I'd be happy to. And we should edit them into this video.
Oh yeah, you find me a clip that says that specifically of Dave Smith saying that he's going to be that Trump's going to be the better
candidate on Israel.
No, yeah, that doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. And we're gonna edit a comment in of me with you a clown face on you because that's
I mean, but no, okay. This idea that Trump, like y'all definitely argued that Trump was the anti-war candidate, that he was going to bring peace to the world, and that he would stop, you know, the
Ukraine war.
That he was a strong man, that he could stand up to, you know, the you know, powers of the world, including Israel. Like that wasn't implied. There's nothing out there about that.
I mean, if you're specifically talking about like Dave Smith, because we're going to keep it narrow, Dave Smith is constantly like everyone's going to have terrible, horrible policy on Israel because they're getting specifically Trump because they're getting $100 million, and Biden's already a zombie.
That wasn't the libertarian argument, even past Dave Smith.
Oh no, because you have to remember, a third of the Libertarian Party did not vote for Trump and specifically cites Israel. But yeah, the Mises caucus, the libertarians that said "fuck it, we're going to vote for Trump," they acknowledged that Trump was going to be horrible on Israel, but that Democrats are going to be horrible on Israel too. So you might as well bend your nose and hopefully get peace in Ukraine.
Okay, so I guess along those lines, because we're you know talking about kind of the parallel between Israel and Ukraine, right? So why are we so adamant that Ukraine should do everything for peace, even though Russia was the aggressor, but we're not saying that in the case of Israel-Palestine?
I think we are saying that in the case of Israel-Palestine. I think that's specifically what we're saying in the case of Israel-Palestine.
Well, but isn't the argument for... Okay, so let's walk through it. Why should we capitulate to Russia, even though they were the aggressor?
So the libertarian argument there is going to be one, NATO expansion, which I know you absolutely love, but two, there's nothing that.
Yeah, so they're reacting to geopolitical.
You asked a question. You can't just cut me off. There's a second part to that.
I'm going to.
I'm going to do that. You're just gonna get in here and circumcise this conversation, huh?
Let's see what you did there.
We shouldn't be looking at that.
Gave your argument a fucking twist, bro.
But I think you're kind of flipping it. It's that, hey, we should be doing everything we can to promote peace. We disagree with the issues. People can disagree with the root causes of the situation, whether it's the expansion of Israel, whether it's like Israel, Palestinian terror, etc. But we have an ability specifically to put that war.
Yeah, so this is why I cut you off, because we're moving to different topics, right? So let's talk about the NATO expansionist argument.
But you're talking about NATO versus Israel, and I was like, you're saying like, why aren't we doing it this way? When it's like, yeah, we should be doing what we can to put a stop to both wars.
Sure. So let's talk about the NATO expansionist argument, right? So what is the NATO expand? I'll let you like steel man it.
Sure. So I mean, I think the best person to actually just cite the argument is Jeffrey Sachs, who, if you're unfamiliar with Jeffrey Sachs, was the economic advisor that America assigned to the Russians after the fall of the Soviet Union to help bring
also
Russia.
Hilarious name.
Yeah, Jeff Sachs.
Rough name to go through high school with. You know what I mean?
But he was the chief economic advisor that America assigns to the Russians after the fall of the Soviet Union. He specifically is the one he specifically brings up. Is it Ed Burns, Jeff Burns, who is Reagan's Secretary of State. That brings up the Niet means Niet, which is basically the number one red line for Russia is NATO or Georgia joining NATO. 2008, we specifically put an open door policy, and not even just open door policy, but write a deterministic statement that NATO will one day welcome Georgia and Ukraine. That's actually right. That's the first negative military action that we actually deal with on Putin when he invades Georgia. It basically in a role to stop that. Now, here's the thing: you don't have to say that like Putin's justified and morally acceptable, but you can't deny that there is a certain provoking action by putting somebody's border unit where they say that, hey, this is a red line for us, Niet means Niet, in 31 separate diplomatic cables, which you can see at the George Washington University Archive on Foreign Affairs. We specifically, in multiple areas, tell the Russians that we will not move NATO one inch eastward. Now, people say like, oh, it's only like a diplomatic. No, we have 31 different diplomatic cables involving everyone up to the Secretary of State. The secretary, hold on, that Secretary of State who also goes on.
You've been talking for a while, bro. Don't give me hold on.
Don't
give me fucking hold on.
You can't ask me to steel man it and then cut it off in the middle. The steel man, you have to let me present the steel man.
All right, let me know when you want
me
know when you're nice and hard, bro. You want
like a little person steel man, because I can give you a midget steel man. I am actually only have like 3 sentences left, but I do like the idea of midget steel man being a request that we make from now on. Wait, can we say midget? Is that a thing we can say?
Steel man?
Yeah, is that a thing? Is that a thing we can say though? We'll come back to that, but we're gonna have to look up the analytics on midget steel man, please, or MSM rather.
Jesus.
But the Jeffrey Sachs thing is specifically that's the Niet means Niet memo, where we specifically from up through Reagan's Secretary of State say putting Ukraine into NATO will result in conflict with NATO that will eventually possibly draw the West into it. So it's not like it was a surprise. It was a thing we knew. It was a thing that we knew was likely to happen. And there's even videos of under the Obama administration of a deputy Secretary of State under Obama that basically is talking about peeling Ukraine away from Russia's sphere of influence without enough for it to basically drag us into war with Russia. But that is a root cause. Now you can say that it's evil for Russia to invade it, which I agree. Most libertarians will tell you that it's absolutely evil to invade a country. Period. But we can't say that we didn't know it was going to happen or that it wasn't a thing where it wasn't provoked. Because that's the thing.
Not very non-aggression pact of them, huh?
Oh, absolutely not. But I don't think anyone's going to argue Putin's a libertarian.
Just a side question, just a clarifying question. Those 31 diplomatic cables that you were talking about, were those to Russia or to the USSR? And what time period are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about during the dissolution of the USSR when it becomes Russia. Because that's literally the standpoint of when Russia decides to let the USSR crumble. We're negotiating the downfall of it. So one of them is literally we're trying to convince them to not have violent repressions of their states that are in revolt.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I know the timeline and who's talking to who here, right? So I'm going to ask you a very pointed question. Mm-hmm. So essentially, I just want to make sure I understand. So because Russia felt threatened by NATO expansionism, that is the justification for their invasion. And you think that is a reasonable justification, and that because of that justification, we should capitulate to Russia in order to facilitate peace in the world.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's actually a perfectly fair and honestly, it's a reasonable question to ask. Why should we handle it the way that we're handling it? I think it comes down to two main factors. One, no matter what our position is on the topic, the end result is going to be the end result. No matter what level of support we apply, short of sending in an airborne regiment, they're going to end up with that chunk of Ukraine. Period. There's not. The size of the population versus the size of the population, their industrial base versus their industrial base. There's no way it ends up any other way than what it's going to be. So what we're talking about now is this war.
So the question is how much does it hurt Russia I mean, I'm having a conversation.
Yeah,
with
yeah,
you,
yeah,
come
yeah.
on.
Well, yeah, but you're saying how much does it hurt Russia? But it's also how many Ukrainians do you sacrifice in the goal of what we know was America's plan of dragging Russia in to a war to weaken them? And we heard that because it was quoted by Lloyd Austin, Biden's Secretary of Defense.
Got it. Okay, so just being really clear, so because Russia felt threatened by
two
NATO
points on that,
expansionism.
So, but you,
Yeah.
because you're asking
go
like why should we? It's because one, we know that there's no way that they can win it. So we're talking about we're going to make them suffer a cost, but we're doing that at the lives of innocent people. And it is a little bit like we know that dragging them into that was going to start that war, because to Russia, that's an existential crisis. And so we don't, like, you can say whatever you want.
So
about
if a nation is having an existential crisis of safety, then they are more within their rights to use military force against their perceived aggressors.
So when you say more within their rights, what do you mean?
You're willing to capitulate and negotiate with them for peace at all costs.
Yeah, I think that is kind of actually the idea, right? Is that if we know that we're in a spot where it's going to come down to conflict with a global superpower that has the most amount of nuclear weapons in the world, and it's over our foreign policy, which we've been told by our own leaders for 30 plus years would result in a conflict that could set us up for World War III. Yeah, no, that is a factor. That is absolutely a factor.
Mm-hmm. Got it. I'm sure you understand the parallel I'm about to draw, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, like, there is no country that is more at existential threat with its surrounding neighbors than Israel, right?
Really? Because I don't think that to be anywhere close to true. Israel is the most advanced technologically.
Really?
They have an Iron Dome. 50 years ago.
Why do they have an Iron Dome?
But they're in no way threatened by their enemies because they're so far advanced. That's kind of like if we went and murdered everybody.
They're constantly being attacked.
Really? They have rockets.
Like since Israel has been like formed.
Okay. So
they've been attacked quite a bit. Yeah, I would say that's pretty like.
What's their?
I don't think that's a very controversial statement.
Yeah, but what's their death toll when you say that they're under threat? Like, yeah, they're knocking missiles out or they're knocking rockets out. But how many? I mean,
got it. So if you suck at defending yourself,
well, you're not. But
then
you're
more warranted in aggression.
Well, but you're not actually. But they're not getting hurt. They're knocking missiles out of the air. Even right now, Israel lost 1,500 people in October 7th, which is,
I mean, how many missiles
horrible.
can I shoot at your house before you're like, ready to, fuck some people up?
I mean, how many are making it to my house? And also, you want to like that? Let's take that justification a step further. So Israel is now in a position.
This is your justification, by the way.
What do you mean? This isn't my justification. This is yours.
This is how you justify Russia.
No, and then, yeah, but my point is that we should be working as a people towards a negotiated, structured peace.
I think this is a bad justification. Just to be very clear, I think this is a bad justification.
Well, this is yeah, but
this is your justification for
I disagree.
Russia, Ukraine. I'm asking you why it works with, in the Russia-Ukraine thing, but not in the other side.
Well, yeah, so that's my point, is that's not the argument that I or the anti-war community is framing. My point, like our point.
That's why I asked you to steel man it, and then asked you if that was the case.
Yeah, so we're talking about like why should we be trying to get to a negotiated peace with Russia? So that is the point that I'm making, and then you're saying like, well, why isn't Israel justified in bombing everything? It's like, yeah, well, we should be making a negotiated peace for those sides, and the fact is, Israel is, like you said, Israel is surrounded by. What, 100 million Arabs, 7.5 to 1. Israel exists because of all of the money and technology we pump into it. And we do that to keep for safety and whatever more reason you want to get on. But that war is going to continue forever as long as we continue to back Israel in ways that allow them to murder 50,000 civilians, including upwards of 30,000 women, children, and minors.
Which is bad.
Which is bad. But that's the point, though. So the point that we're saying is that we act in a way, our foreign policy, that perpetuates that war. So our foreign policy is also acting in a way that's going to perpetuate conflict with Russia if we continue to engage in NATO expansion. So the argument isn't, is Russia justified in doing this? It's that we need to be acting in ways where our foreign policy isn't specifically designed to create conflict around the world, which, by the way, conflict that we profit on as a society. So it's hard to be like, oh, we're doing all this stuff out of the good of our hearts, when it's like we have a military-industrial complex that is always constantly trying to feed whatever the next great semi-global conflict is going to be. And they all just seem to happen right when one cools down, one spins up. That seems kind of coincidental.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I just want to ask, like, are you under the impression that the Trump admin is against the military-industrial complex?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's even. I think.
Yeah, like definitely not. Right?
I think. I
like
don't. Think,
if there's
I don't think,
if one side is more against the military-industrial complex than the other, which side would it be?
oh, that's a hard one right now.
Is it?
Well, I mean, a lot of the Warhawks are on your side now. Like, you're on the side of agreeing with Douglas Murray. Like, you have neocons on your side now.
Yeah, only because the MAGA crowd is so like psycho that they've essentially pushed out the neocons on like economic policy, right? But they're not losing the Warhawks. Like they're not losing the people that want to.
Well, I think
that you're disagreeing with right now.
Well, I think that is actually.
And Douglas Murray is MAGA. What are you talking about?
Is he? Because I think that's well.
Yes.
I mean, you can say MAGA, but not America First, which I guess is that's the delineation that's going on.
He's very pro-Trump. I mean, he was sucking Pete Hegseth's dick metaphorically.
I would really say metaphorically he's doing a lot of lifting in that sentence.
Yeah. I mean, Douglas Murray had to drive, so he didn't want to blow
yeah. But I mean, I would say it's a fair statement to say that there is anti-war fervor in both sides in one side of each political.
But is it equal?
Right, yeah, absolutely. I would say that the anti-war movement, the anti-war movement side on the anti-war libertarians moved over to Republicans because of how because
you got
war,
tricked.
No, because of war policy for you guys. Because you guys think like you guys bought a hook.
Who starts all the wars? What was the last war that the left started? Well, fucking World War II?
I mean, I think the argument that you would get from the from on the Ukraine side is that policy that we specifically insisted on under Biden, refusing, like we specifically, like Russia literally said, and this isn't conjecture. They submitted a peace treaty 2 months prior to the invasion of Ukraine that said, hey, they would promise not to go to war if we would just guarantee Ukraine wouldn't join NATO. And we said no. We told them to tear that up.
Like you're really
we're what? We were
like you're really dodging the question here.
What do you mean? I would say that that's a war that we specifically pushed in to start. And then when it happened, we specifically said it's a good thing that it happened because it's going to help us support Ukraine and degrade Russia's military capabilities for a generation. That's a direct quote from Biden.
So you're blaming the Russian invasion of Ukraine on the Democrats?
On just NATO expansion in general, which also...
And you think NATO expansionism is largely from Democrats?
I think if
this rope-a-dope is insane.
No.
I do not get it.
Hold on. Well, because again, we had the ability to prevent that, and we said because the people that were in power at the time, it's the Victoria Nulands.
Okay, who sent those cables?
What do you mean, what cables?
What admin was in power at the time?
During when Russia in 2022, Biden.
No, I'm talking the cables you were talking about earlier about, NATO shall not expand, to the west and all that.
Oh, the Niet means Niet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean that literally from Reagan into Bush.
Right.
And well, also though, all of Europe.
So you're saying the neocons are the ones that laid the groundwork for the NATO expansionism in the war?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that started with Estonia, Latvia, and
Yeah,
what's
this
the other
this
one?
whole rope-a-dope of like, Trump doesn't count as a neocon, so, all of
Mike,
Bush, all of Reagan, all of this
this
stuff is
current
just like this
no
is
no no
such a
no no.
rope-a-dope
I mean,
bullshit.
you can dance off the
Like,
question, but in 2022, you guys
oh,
were in
I'm
charge.
dancing.
That's what you're doing. In 2022, you guys were in charge. You were presented with a way to avoid conflict, and you said no, push it. And you're going to pretend that it's all about democracy and waving the flag and protecting countries' rights when we wanted to pull one of our rivals into a military engagement, and that's what it is. That is 100% what it is. And you guys are on tape saying it, that it's a good thing that we're doing this because now we're going to be able to degrade Russia for
No,
for
what
a
I'm
generation.
pushing back against is the idea that the Democrats are more war hawkish and more at fault for American empire and expansionism
Oh no, that's
than
okay.
the conservatives and the neocons.
Well, yeah,
like that is absolutely insane.
That's
like
well,
to
no,
say
no,
that
no,
they're both doing it.
That's not the argument I made, and you widened the scope. What I was talking about was specifically this conflict. I think we can both agree that American, like the neocons of the early 2000s, chiefly to blame for a lot of the problems. I think that's a fair statement. But you kind of jumped off on this current circumstance.
Where do you think the Cheneys of the world stand today? Do they stand more with Trump or more with Kamala Harris?
They endorsed your party. The Cheneys are a terrible example. That was the worst example you could use. They both endorsed Kamala Harris. They campaigned with you guys, which is literally why a bunch of libertarians ran to the Republicans, because you guys are the party of the Cheneys right now. Kamala Harris got Liz Cheney's endorsement and waved it and said it was an honor, and then campaigned with her. What are you talking about? Who are the Cheneys? Like, what? That's the problem. Are you forgetting that whole? You literally cited the Cheneys and then kind of forgot that you were the side that actually had the Cheneys.
Well, Liz Cheney mostly on that was like on the gay rights stuff, right?
Donald Trump. Okay, we're gonna pretend that that Dick Cheney didn't specifically endorse Kamala Harris, and she didn't say that she was happy to have his endorsement. And this most recent round had nothing to do with gay rights. It had to do with American leadership. Verbatim. Come on, we're gonna talk about. I mean, you had a really good point until specifically the Cheneys, but come on, like.
So let's just call it neocons then, or the military-industrial complex.
For
right?
sure.
So again, so Cheney's was the wrong word to use. Let's call it military-industrial complex.
As long as you're good.
But I need you to acknowledge that was not because they thought that Trump was anti-war. That was because Trump started talking shit about Liz Cheney being gay.
No, I reject that entirely. It's because Liz Cheney was aggressive on the Ukraine stuff.
I mean, yeah, look it up. But like, so who is the military-industrial complex on the side of more? Is it Kamala Harris or Trump?
Oh, it's both.
Who's it more?
Industries like that own both people. That's the argument. Is that it's not that. And again, though, you have neocons.
So then there is no anti-war candidate.
Oh, even
though that was the argument I heard about Trump over and over again.
Well, he was the less war candidate, which again, trying to force this
because he's willing to appease Russia, basically.
And by doing what? By acknowledging that we should agree to allow it to say that we'll never accept Ukraine into NATO in terms for peace, which was policy we wrote on for 20 years.
Say that again.
Which was by acknowledging that we wouldn't take Ukraine into NATO, which was policy we rolled on from 20 years, from 88 to 2008. 2008 is when we said that yes.
Okay, but why did Ukraine reach out and want to join NATO?
Who gives a shit?
Oh yeah. Oh, now it doesn't matter, right? No. Russia's just reacting to what the world stage is doing. But as soon as it's on the other side, it's like, oh, we're not allowed to. No one's allowed to react there.
No, hey, look, you can react.
This is the rope-a-dope of this argument, right? That I constantly hate. That Russia is just reacting. You had to expect them, even though it's bad. You got to expect it, right?
For sure.
But everyone else has to act with perfect information of the future.
Well, no, but it's not perfect information in the future. It's what we knew do exactly at the time that our leaders had told us repeatedly, to the point that when we were going to bring him in.
Okay, so why did Ukraine
British...
ask to join Russia, or to join NATO?
Yeah, because Russia is historically a threat to
Because
Ukraine.
NATO did not reach out to Ukraine, for the record. Ukraine asked to join Russia.
Asked to join Russia?
To join NATO. It's fucking 3 a.m. Your boy's been working all day. Listen, I literally forgot about Dick Cheney. Okay, like it's fucking late. What do you want?
Yeah, I was about to say we're a little we're not at our best. We're not at our best. But yeah, here's the point of that though. It's like, what did Ukraine want? That's fine, but how is that in the best? How is that in the best? How is that in the best interests of America? It's not. It's undeniably not.
No, it's in the best interest of the world to not allow sovereign nations to be nations to be invaded.
Well,
especially because again, we've talked about this before, right? The context that I think everyone is constantly missing and forgetting about Ukraine is that Ukraine was one of the largest stockpiles, had one of the largest stockpiles of nuclear weapons in the world, right? I think they were like 4th or something like that. I mean, I don't know the number. And then there was a nuclear non-proliferation act that was signed both by the U.S. and Russia to have them give up their nukes, give Russia all their nukes.
In exchange for what? In exchange for what? You always leave this part out. In exchange for what?
In exchange for protection from both Russia and the U.S.
In exchange for
that if they were ever invaded, that they would be supported
with neutrality. They had to have a neutrality agreement.
What do you mean?
They had to remain neutral. That was part of that agreement. That they would give up their nukes, they would get security guarantees from both great world powers and remain neutral.
Okay, and what was the terms of the neutrality? Like, what does neutrality mean in this context?
I'm pretty sure not joining a military alliance that's in direct
okay, and
opposition.
So again, I ask you, why did why did Ukraine ask to join NATO?
Bro, are you okay?
Seems like it matters now. It's 4 in the morning.
It's 4 in the morning. I'm like real concerned you're gonna crash your car on the way to work tomorrow. I mean, I'm not concerned.
I'm not.
I'm praying for it a little bit. But again, yeah, it's like why did Russia go in with that? But
also, you should take my portal and come help me with this.
Oh yeah, I suppose we should probably actually play the fucking game.
I've been clearing this whole fucking level.
Oh shit, we got 2 fucking points. Oh shit. All right, I need to. All right, I'll do that afterwards. But it's also, it's like, okay, so why were they scared of Russia? Because they're historically, Russia is an ally, or Russia is oppressing.
How many times has Russia invaded Ukraine in history?
6?
Is it more than once?
Yeah, but I mean, how many times has Europe? But how many times has Europe invaded Russia through Ukraine, which would give the Russians the purpose for that existential concern with Ukraine? It's more than 6.
Like unprovoked?
I mean, Napoleon, Hitler, Polish Lithuania.
I don't know that you can say Hitler was unprovoked.
When Hitler invaded Russia?
Yeah.
All right, so just so we're clear, you...
As in, like, there was already a war happening. Like...
Well, yeah, but they weren't. But the Nazis betrayed the Russians and invaded.
Nazis are bad.
I was like, wait, are you saying the Nazis were justified? Because I'm concerned about your level of sleep right now. But yeah, like that is also the flip side.
Yeah, but this whole narrative of like Russia is they're just this innocent country that's just hanging out, and people were asking to be part of NATO because they're just fucking mean, they're just totally gonna threaten Russia, and like don't look into why they asked to. It doesn't matter why they wanted to join NATO. It's just they're just being mean to Russia. They're just all Well,
but it's like, why are we in that situation with Russia, and which is why I brought up Jeffrey Sachs originally. Is because we specifically tanked Russia's economic rebound and then decided to not help them join the community of nations so we could keep them on the X-ends. We wanted to keep them as an adversary.
And why did we do that?
So we could keep them as an adversary so we can continue to sell weapons. because we literally around the time of the terror wars, we considered letting Russia join NATO.
Yeah, that would be crazy, right? Isn't
Why?
the whole point of NATO that to protect against Russia invasion of Europe?
Well, there was for USSR, it wasn't Russia, and at a point before.
Now that distinction matters.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, at a point before we had
not
Putin,
not when we're talking about the cables, but now.
Well, no, but the cables were USSR and Russia, not just USSR, which is a thing that you're pointing out. When it was just one cable, you were like, yeah, it was just the USSR, but it continued with Russia under it continued with Russia, so it's not like the cables were just Russia. We were just making that argument with just the USSR, which was defunct. But again, though, the point of that is we had an ability to bring Russia into the fucking the global League of Nations and westernize them, but we specifically didn't. And that's before it was Putin, before we were dealing with it, and even after into Putin, we specifically.
So again, Russia's just reacting to geopolitical things happening around them.
Well, specifically us screwing them on economic loans we had promised them after the fall of the Soviet Union to help modernize their country, and then didn't, and then help turn their country over to oligarchs because it was easier for us to take advantage.
But
of oil.
If we're gonna play this cause and effect game, right? Because I'm gonna be honest, this cause and effect game, it kind of feels like libertarians especially are always on the side of Russia when it comes to the cause and effect, but never the side of the other country that's reacting to what Russia is doing, right? Because again, I'm gonna keep asking this question: why did Ukraine ask to join NATO?
Yeah, I've already answered that question, so there's no need to keep answering it over and over. They feel threatened by Russia, obviously and understandably. But the point is you're saying
obviously and understandably. Okay.
But you're going to say who's on the side of Ukraine, and libertarians aren't. See, we would disagree with you completely because we're on the side of let's get less Ukrainians killed. You're on the side of let's use as many.
Yeah, no, you're on the side of give them a chunk of land,
which they're going to get no matter what. Right, or do you believe there's a way in which that because that
and
that's
again,
the
and I answered this earlier too, that the question is how much does it hurt Russia?
Yeah,
to gain that land, because this is the larger point.
But
right?
this is hold on. I asked the question. This is where you're lawful evil. This is where you're like, we don't care how many Ukrainians we sacrifice because we have to make Russia pay a cost to adhere to the global order.
You think that's a lawful evil?
You're willing to continue to put that population through war that they have no chance of winning for land that they're going to lose.
So just to be clear, I'm not putting Ukraine at war. I don't think I have that ability. But I'm just throwing that out there.
You're supporting our continued influence over it to keep them at war. But
here's the thing. I see this as like the cowardice and unwilling to fight back against a bully like this on the geopolitical level will lead to much more conflict and war in the future, right? Because if there's a precedence on the national stage or on the global stage that as long as you are a superpower, as long as you have nukes and the other country doesn't, then you can run in and take land and do whatever you want to that population, and the rest of the world is going to capitulate to you and tell the weaker country that they need to just give up because there might be bloodshed, right? We're always going to go with whatever causes the least amount of people to die, even if that means that you give up your country, you give up your rights, and you give up your resources.
So
right?
I agree with you, but
some things are worth fighting for, and that doesn't make you lawful evil. I think that makes you lawful good. Actually.
Now, I agree with you, but what does the war in Iraq have anything to do with this?
What?
You literally just described the war in Iraq.
How so?
Well, a country against a larger country.
Are you talking about
nukes,
the first Gulf War
and the second? A country like
how does the I understand how the first Gulf War fits that narrative. I don't understand how the second one does.
So a country with a large superpower with nukes invades a country without nukes and is told basically to just give up and accept occupation.
Are you talking about the U.S. invading Iraq?
Yes. What
is the country with nukes in this situation?
Well, we were the country with nukes.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, just to be clear, like the first Gulf War to prevent them like taking over Kuwait,
That's
right?
also not a that's so here's the other thing too. That's another example of us being warmongers, because we know that we told Saddam Hussein through our diplomatic corps that we don't care what Gulf states do to Gulf states. And as soon as he invaded, because he said that Kuwait was drilling sideways and stealing Iraqi oil, we then used that as a pretext to invade. And we specifically did that so we could snap America out of the Vietnam effect.
Mm-hmm. So you think the first Gulf War was like we shouldn't have done that? We shouldn't have prevented Iraq from taking over Kuwait.
So when we talk about preventing Iraq,
Also, where
from
are we
taking over
going
Kuwait,
on this
I have
map
no
right
fucking idea. I was following you. You've cleared everything. I'm assuming we go north.
I think it's up here.
Yeah, I think it's that way. But it's like,
Yeah,
again,
so
though,
you're saying that
that's this thing where you're like, oh, we were acting in good faith to try and protect the Kuwait and all this stuff. When it's like we literally we
regardless if we're acting in good faith or not, I do think that there is something to like we have to like on the global stage there can't be a precedent that like larger countries can just attack and take land from smaller countries.
Even if
like
so,
I think we fought a couple of world wars about this. Like basically all of human history is just that.
And if we encourage said country that it's fine for them to go do it quietly, and then when they do it for us to invade them, there's not an issue with that. Because we have it. We have the diplomatic cables. We literally
really bad, and we shouldn't be encouraging people to. Yes, which is just why I don't like neocons. So I'm with you on all of this.
But again, though, the moral of the story is no matter what happens.
But again, I feel like you're
the Ukrainian people are going to end up. They're going to fight hard and they're going to give it up. But the whole point is like if you want to talk about
this is the invasion, like we have to look at the large.
Yeah, the large picture.
Again,
this war
have
was
to look at the larger picture, right?
Yeah,
like the fact of the matter is no one else in the.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you cut out. You still there? Yeah, you still there? You got no sound coming through. I am looking at your Discord. You're frozen doing a peace sign. It's
as the means to.
We just lost you for like the last 15 seconds.
I mean, I'm fine on my side.
Yeah, but on the side that's recording, so you're gonna want to restate it.
I was fine on my side. I don't know. Okay. Well, no. So I mean, I was making the same kind of point about the global stage, right? Mm-hmm. That like the U.S. is the only country in the world, along with NATO, that is going to do anything about one superpower invading a smaller country to just like take land and to subjugate people and to take resources, right?
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, specifically...
And that if there is a precedent on the world stage that a larger nation with nukes can take the land and resources and people of another country, that will lead to more conflict.
Which, again, though, is the argument for Iraq, which is when we invaded Iraq, we stayed there for 20 years and then took over their oil.
I don't know why we keep getting to Iraq.
Because you're saying the precedent wasn't set.
Like, this is a red herring straw man.
No, it's not. It's a very similar situation we don't like to acknowledge. We invaded Iraq. We went through. We took their resources. We tried to hold it. Who
did Iraq invade? First of all, Iraq didn't have nukes, right?
Well, we had nukes. We were the stronger military that did it. We're Russia in this in this example that you're saying that we can't have.
But we didn't invade Iraq to take land.
But we tried
now,
to
if you're saying that it was like a war for oil
years.
and resources or whatever, then like, yes, the second Iraq war is bad. I agree with you. But like, so again, if the U.S. is Russia in that situation, aren't you agreeing with me?
Yeah, no. Again, it's bad.
I'm very confused.
But again, though, I'm saying that it's lawful evil, and because you're like, oh well, we can't let someone else do it. It's like we did it.
It's not.
So what you're saying is we're the only side that should be doing the lawful evil shit.
No, we're both saying that it's bad. It's just that you think it's justified with Russia, and I'm telling you that it's not.
Again, though, I don't think it's morally justified, and that's not the term, but it is something that you would call a provocation, and that any military analyst would honestly call a provocation. And something where it's like we knew what the result was going to be because we were told over the course of 30 years. And the end result of that, no matter how we want to stretch it up, was the death of civilians. Period. And we dragged an adversarial nation into a battlefield, into a theater that we thought we were going to be able to use to drain them and make them pay a price. And that's where we're at right now, is they're paying a price. But from 2020 or from 2022, from the time frame where Russia offered peace terms on it, that wouldn't have required land, because they didn't ask for land originally. It was just that, hey, confirm Ukraine's neutrality and that they can't join NATO, so we're not threatened by the fact of you guys eventually putting NATO weaponry on Russia's border. We told them no. We told them absolutely not.
Didn't Russia try to take Crimea in like 2016?
2014.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, like, Russia's trying to take land.
This large war, though, they specifically had a peace deal on the table. They had peace deals on the table twice that we told them to tear up.
I feel like we're really blowing past the Russia is once land part.
But yeah, again, though, I don't think Russia specifically wants any more land. And also, if you're going to talk about it, we also have to acknowledge the fact that there was shelling of ethnic Russians in the eastern Donbass that precipitated the 2020 or the 2014 invasion.
Right. Okay. So again, if we're going to do this cause and effect thing, let's go all the way back. But instead, why does it always only end in Russia?
Well, I don't think
Russia's interest.
I don't think it always only ends in Russia. I think that it's the fact
that
it's like
because
it's going to run that way.
So Russia invading Ukraine, they knew that they were going to trigger a reaction from the U.S. Correct?
Which time?
So then that made the
Hold
most
on.
recent one.
Okay.
The most recent one. Like the current war that is happening. When they invaded Ukraine, they knew that the U.S. was going to react. Correct?
Well, they specifically said, "Hey, give us."
But then isn't that provocation?
Well, it was a peace treaty.
They provoked the U.S. because they invaded Ukraine.
Well, and they specifically said, "Hey, acknowledge that Ukraine's not going to join NATO and we're not going to invade." But it's an existential crisis for them. And again, I don't have to believe that it's morally justified for Russia for me to acknowledge that we knew what the actions were going to be, and
right,
we
so
continued
we both
to
agree
push
it's
down
immoral.
that road. Oh yeah. Again, that's not. We've been saying it's immoral. That's the whole point. Is that it's not that it's
right.
It's
It
not
just
that,
seems
it's
weird
not that,
that
they're
it's
moral,
like it's
not that
immoral,
they're-
but we should just capitulate and give them everything that they want.
we should do what we can to.
Like, it kind of seems like we're promoting immoral action on the world stage at that point.
By our own example. Because that's the point I keep making, where you're like, you don't like it. It's like, oh, we're
I mean,
of.
if you want to say that neocons are hypocrites on the global stage, then yes, I agree with you, but I don't know what the point is.
That
it's still bad that Russia invaded Ukraine,
Yeah,
and we shouldn't make it a world precedent that like larger nations can just invade smaller nations, especially after they gave up their nukes.
kind of like after Libya gave up their weapons of mass destruction and then we invaded them? Or is that not?
That's also bad. Yes, that's also bad.
That's not a close enough allegory for you. But that's the point.
Again, I don't know why this is that hard. Like, yes, that is also bad.
So it's
like,
bad,
but again, it seems like you're agreeing with me, just not in the case of Russia-Ukraine.
No, I listen. I said it's bad. I said that it's not morally justified, but it is considered a war provoke, and it's a thing that we knew was going to happen if we went down a specific path, and we continue to press the issue. So that's the thing. It's like I've agreed.
So let me ask you
with
this: so if the U.S. invaded Libya, and specifically wanted a chunk of Libya, you think the right thing to do would be for Libya to just give up that chunk and give it to us?
So the fact that they're taking land versus destroying a country and turning it into open air slave markets, that makes it that much different.
Again, both are bad. I don't know why you think I'm like defending.
Yeah, but
Libya. I'm just trying to make it more allegorious to what Russia is doing.
Yeah, because I mean that's essentially kind of what we did, right? Like, So, but again,
and bad. So again, but I feel like you're not answering my question.
No, I've answered this question multiple times. It's bad. It's not good. But we have to take a certain level of responsibility that we do foreign policy.
But here's the thing:
to intentionally create war, Mike. This is the part where you're just like, well, I just don't get it. I just don't understand how us continually taking actions that we know promote global conflict isn't on us, at least in some way. It's not our fault in any way. It's only the people that react to the things we do. It's only their fault. And like I said, I can say Russia's bad. Russia's clearly bad. The point that
I haven't said that it's only their fault. I have said every step of the way that we shouldn't be promoting global conflict, of course.
But we were doing it.
But just like Russia, okay, so both sides are bad and both sides are reacting to what the other side is doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so regardless, you can't have a world precedent where larger nations can invade smaller nations and take shit.
But we already have that world precedent, is the point that I was making. And you're saying we can't have that world precedent. When we were the unipolar superpower, we did it 6 times.
Who did we invade to take their stuff?
I mean, whether we plant a flag in their ground or then control the way that they handle their resources, it's the same thing.
Got it. But in those situations, it would have been correct for the country to just capitulate to us, is what you're saying.
Well, the countries did all eventually capitulate to us.
And you think that was the right thing to do? Like, so if
no,
there was
Mike, I don't think it's the right thing to do. And again, you keep trying to pin me on morality when I've said.
But that's the thing is I do think it is the. So I'm gonna make a moral statement, right? I do think it is the wrong thing to do to reward Russia with land and resources for invading Ukraine, invading a sovereign nation.
Mm-hmm. And when you say like,
why do you disagree with that?
Human cost, because you're talking about, and again, this is where I say we get into the thing of whether or not it's lawful evil, because you're willing to spend human lives to make Russians pay a capital. True or false?
Okay, but the reason it's not lawful evil is because you and I have the same goal, which is the least amount of conflict and death in the world. Can we agree there?
Sure. I mean, for argument's
sake. And so my argument, for argument's sake, yeah, I'm actually a supervillain, my bad. But my argument is that by setting this precedent, it's going to lead to more conflict and war on the global stage.
And then,
because superpowers, because they're like, I don't know, China, like basically any nation that has neighbors that are smaller than them that don't have nukes, right, can then just invade and take land, take resources, and that becomes the new world precedent. So that will lead to more conflict and death.
So yes, and my response to that is already the global precedent. That has been the global precedent since we were playing world police around the world.
But you agree it's bad.
Oh yeah. Again, from a morality standpoint, I've acknowledged it's bad, but I'm saying that that's already been the way it is, and we're pretending like we're enforcing morality when we're really just trying to expand our global position. And any argument to the side of that is dishonest. We're not doing it for benevolent reasons. We're never doing it for benevolent reasons. Oh my God.
Okay, yeah, but I'm going to be honest. Yeah, I got one shot.
I'm gonna be following you soon. Hold on. All right, he's on. Oh God, fuck. Let's see if I can. All right, you're gonna. Hold on. Put a pin in it. He's stunned. He was. Wait, did he? He was stunned, and then
he was not stunned. He was not stunned. He was doing an animation to fuck our mouth.
Well, where'd the stun bar go? His stun bar was full. He started that.
It was not completely full. It was pretty full, but it was not completely full.
All right. Well, then let's finish the conversation here then before.
But anyway, so even if the U.S. is doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, shouldn't they still be doing the right thing?
Yeah, and that's where I say it's moralizing and it's 100%. You're not doing it for the right reasons, and to say that we're doing it for the right reasons is ignoring reality.
But who cares if we're doing it for the right reasons if it's the right thing?
But we're still going to keep.
If it sets the right precedent.
But it doesn't set the right precedent because we will continue to do the wrong thing over and over, and all we're trying to do is stop our rivals from doing it.
Isn't the right answer there then to do the right thing in this case, but then also do the right thing in the other cases, and not just do the wrong thing here because we've done the wrong thing other times?
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely agree with that, but it's detached from reality of what will and continue to occur given our system. You know what I mean? Like
so you just don't believe that doing the right thing is ever possible, so we should just do the wrong thing.
I think that in reality, like in a realistic system outside of a word game, the thing that we should be doing is trying to minimize the damage to innocent people. Innocent people that are getting caught in great power machinations, which is what this is right now. Which is why it's like, hey, you can say that we should have supported, and I mean, and to a point, like I agree with you, when Russia invaded, I think it was the morally just, accurate thing. Even though we helped drag them into it, it was morally just for us to help defend them at the initial part. But in April of 2022, when the Russians said, like, okay, well, we had an initial offer, we sent Boris Johnson there to knock down a peace offer. We've knocked down two peace offers. And then we got to a point where Russia, and again, this is the other part that's so goddamn stupid. We know
how does Russia traditionally handle ceasefires and peace offers?
Well, I mean,
they usually honor those, or how's that go?
Well, I mean, the last one lasted for 10 years until under Biden we said that we were going to welcome Ukraine back into NATO. But again,
I'm sorry, hasn't Russia broken like every ceasefire that they've made with Ukraine?
I mean, how many lasting ceasefires have they had for this war? Or are you talking about
that's what I'm saying.
Or are you talking about since 2014? Or do you
like,
mean just specifically
this is my point, right? Is like we've tried to capitulate to Russia before, and it doesn't work. They just break the peace treaties or the peace deals and the ceasefires. So like there is no capitulation here.
That's not true, though.
That stops Russia.
We've negotiated peace accords with Russia in Georgia, in Chechnya, and we had an advanced one in 2014 with Russia that lasted for a long time until we broached this issue again. Again, Obama, who
it was our fault that they broke the ceasefires
for specifically Ukraine. We literally had a ceasefire with them that was going to go into a full peace treaty, and it's like, yeah, maybe they would have broken a full peace treaty, but it would have been less death for less long, but we specifically denied it.
Wow.
That's what you have to do for when you're talking about saving as much human life as possible. Because that's the thing is we like to talk about this like it's a war game of numbers, but these are people.
If Russia continues to attack and invade people, so you think that had Russia made that peace deal with Boris Johnson, right? That would be the end of it, and Russian aggression is over forever.
I think we would not be anywhere near close to what we're dealing with now. Not even close. 100%. I think because again, I just don't understand. Like Russia has a long history of invading its neighbors. So does Germany, but they get pulled into the world system and then they get better.
I think Germany's a little. I think Germany's a little different. Like modern day Germany is a little different than historical Germany, right? Where like Russia is being run by a former KGB agent.
Sure. Russia was also in the process of modernizing and being dependent on the rest of the world for income. Again, they're like this is that factor. Russia had to sacrifice a great deal to push this war off because to them it's existential. I don't think the Russians would.
That is just bullshit. It's not existential. Like, if Ukraine, so answer this question. If Ukraine join, let's say, let's go all the way. So Ukraine joins NATO, right? Is NATO going to invade Russia?
So the Russian belief, and this is what I was mentioning earlier, how many times has Europe invaded Russia through Ukraine?
So the answer is you think yes, that NATO will invade Russia.
Absolutely. Or we would continue.
Absolutely.
We would continue to do what we're doing now. We would weaken and contain, and then when they were weak enough, we would split them up. Because that is what our MO has been since we've been the monopolar superpower. Any adversary we've had that's gracefully bowed to us, we've overseen their destruction. Didn't
you just bring up Germany? We oversaw Germany's destruction.
We weren't the
What about Japan?
We weren't the monopolar superpower at that point. Those were places that have already been pulled into. I said since we became the monopolar superpower, since the fall of the Soviet Union.
Okay, so you mean only the Soviet Union then?
Libya, Iraq, what we're attempting with Iran. I mean, there's more than a few countries that we completely annihilate, that we basically broke down into nothing and then reformed because we have no check on our power. And again, though, it doesn't matter if I believe it. It's, do the Russians have a reason to believe that if they are weak enough and they get the upper hand, would we work against them to the point of their destruction? And I think you're crazy if you can't put yourself in the shoes of a Russian and be like, yeah, you would be concerned. Absolutely. If we had American weapons 50 miles from Moscow.
I'm going to be honest. I think this is a very naive take, right? So, do you think it's more likely that Russia is attacking Ukraine because they're scared and threatened, or is it more likely that, just as they've done through like all of Russian history, that they are invading their neighbors to take resources and land? And this is the justification.
Okay, I guess your point though is that we keep, like, they do it over and over throughout history. We do it over and over throughout history. And you're talking about a situation where the single greatest geographical weakness for Russia, the eastern side, is Ukraine. And we're going to move NATO into it, which is a hostile military alliance that's against you. And you don't think they take that as an existential
I feel like you're saying
threat?
that because the U.S. does bad things, we should just let the Russians do bad things.
No, I think that you should not be naive in the fact that there's a reason the Russians would consider us an existential threat if we're moving into their single geographic
do you think land and
weakness.
resources has any bearing in the Ukraine war?
From where it was before, no. Because before we started trying to peel them off, they had a lease on Sevastopol, and they basically had everything they needed out of that when that was inside of it. We started peeling them out of their sphere of influence. We don't think we were the Russians don't think we were trying to peel Ukraine out of the sphere of influence because we wanted to win something economically. They took that as we were trying to do that to set them up for weakness and hurt. And there's not any, and again, you don't have to justify with saying that Russia is morally acceptable for invading and killing innocent people, which is not, again, what I or the anti-war opinion says. We think it is deplorable that they went in and invaded, but it's also, you have to have a certain level of the school of realism, where it's like, of course they're going to take it in a situation.
Is NATO expansionism the only reason that Putin has given for invading Ukraine?
I would say it's the prime one.
What other reasoning has he given?
Oh, the historic ties of Ukraine to Russia?
Right, that basically, the half of Ukraine that they're trying to invade and take is rightfully Russian.
Which, again,
they want the land.
Fun part. So Kiev is the ancestral homeland of the Russian people, which is whatever. And the only reason I bring that up is because we mentioned that when we're talking about it under the Obama administration. No, I don't think they wanted the land. I think they wanted to keep.
Don't think they wanted the land?
If Ukraine would have remained neutral, that would not have been the pop. If it would have stayed. And here's the thing. You're like, oh, well, why did Ukraine go out of it? Well, because
what did Ukraine do to break the neutrality?
Attempt to join an anti-Russian military organization.
Okay, why did they attempt to join NATO?
Well,
again, if we're gonna have this cause and effect, you can't just stop it.
No, I mean, I'm not going to. The point that I would tell you is because that we started using color guards and NGOs to influence the Ukrainians away from the Russians.
That's why Ukraine asked to join NATO?
That's when that process started, is when we started funding NGOs inside of Ukraine to literally start influencing Ukraine away from Russia. There was in 2006 there was not a concern.
Okay. Let's just get our facts straight here. When did Ukraine attempt to join NATO?
Because what the open door policy starts 2008, so I think it's 2006.
No. Ukraine attempts to join NATO, asks to join NATO after it was attacked by Russia in 2014.
No, that's not true. Ukraine NATO partnership peace and agreed to NATO action plan in 2002.
Agreed to a NATO action plan.
Mm-hmm.
But when did it try to formally join NATO?
That is when they formally try and join NATO, because that's the step that's starting the steps in the process to join NATO. Because what is it? 1994 is when they have their peace summit, and then that's when because 94 is when Ukraine gives up their nukes. Is that right? Yeah, because it's 2002 is the action plan, 2005 is the intensified dialogue program. 2014 is when they make their official request. But all of those are the steps where you're basically applying and starting the road to go down. Which, again, when you start talking about the niet means niet, these are all things where throughout this entire time we're talking about Russia constantly saying this is a red line.
It isn't the fact that Ukraine invaded NATO exactly the reason why
you did it.
All right, I'm sorry. Yeah, isn't the Russia? Jesus Christ, we gotta end this stream, bro. Isn't the fact that Russia invaded Ukraine the proof positive that Ukraine probably was right in wanting to join NATO, right? And again, if you're and we're also saying that it was in 2002 that broke the Neutrality Act for the nuclear deal that they did. That's what you're saying.
Well, that's when the argument is that look, they started peeling away from neutrality. And again, though, this flip point is where it's just like, yeah, do I think it's morally justified that Russia invaded its neighbor and killed people? No, I don't. Do I think that it was entirely foreseeable based on what we knew would happen, and we still continued to push a foreign policy plan that we knew would eventually which had a high likelihood of resulting in the death of people?
Okay, so what was Russia doing with Ukraine before 2014 and before, as you say, we installed a puppet government?
Well, that's
they were just chilling, being nice, letting Ukraine do Ukraine things.
Yeah,
was the KGB balls deep in Ukraine, trying to make them part of the new USSR?
The CIA
Again, if we're gonna do cause and effect, let's do the whole thing.
So here's the thing. I don't know much about that, but I do know that the CIA was on the ground committing a color revolution against the democratically elected president, Yanukovych. That Yanukovych agreed to the Minsk Accords, and then we specifically. But
you don't know what Russia's involvement in the Ukrainian government was prior to that.
No. I mean, we know that they have some.
Do you think Russia was innocent and not playing in Ukraine at all?
To an extent more than we have in Mexico, I would say it's probably similar. But again, though, because that's this thing you're talking about, it's like, they're doing stuff. It's like they're doing the same stuff we do, and they're doing the exact same thing we would do if Mexico was about to join the USSR.
Except that we're not attempting to take chunks of our neighbor's land. We've never tried. Okay, I was going to say we've never tried to invade Mexico. We did actually take chunks of Mexico.
Yeah,
that did actually happen.
I was like, you caught that. I was like, you're not going to tell me we didn't take a big chunk of Mexico with the Gadsden purchase there, right?
Yeah. But if we were consistently aggressive with Mexico, right, and then Mexico decided to join a military alliance to protect themselves from the people that were invading them constantly,
and what do you think
would you be like Mexico is wrong because they're trying to protect themselves from the people that invade them constantly, because they're instigating against the people constantly invading them,
and that's
by
the
trying
thing
to protect themselves in a military treaty.
I don't have to think that Ukraine is wrong. That's the other part too. I understand Ukraine's motivations. I don't believe Ukraine to be evil or unjust or immoral. I mean, I think it's honestly fair to say that the Ukrainians are the victims in all of this by a big degree, by getting caught in the machinations of global power struggles. Like I think the Ukrainians are a lot of them are downright heroic. Now, obviously, some of them have been making a little bit of money off the war and stuff of that nature, but
Okay.
but
So real quick, I'm going to go back to something else we were talking about because I'm reading up a little bit on the Ukraine nuclear weapons deal.
Mhm.
So in 2009, after the 2002 and 2005 NATO memorandums that you're talking about, in 2009 there was a joint declaration by Russia and the United States that the security assurances made in the 94 Budapest Memorandum would
Correct.
still be valid
Yes.
after they expired in 2009.
In a response to
So then that's clearly then
No,
the whole
that was-
2002 2005 like
no, we negotiated again. No, Chief, we negotiated again under Bush with that because that's also when we signed the non-proliferation agreement.
No, but you said earlier that it was
That's when the argument.
I asked you specifically.
Yeah, that's when the argument starts.
When was Ukraine's neutrality broken?
Mhm.
And you're saying it's in 2002.
That's when the
And I'm telling you, there's a joint declaration by Russia and the U.S. confirming the security assurances made in the 94 Budapest Memorandum.
They reaffirm it because that's after the negotiations with Bush at the same time when we have the non-nuclear weapons proliferation that's going through with Bush. But again, though, that is the road to them starting to be in NATO. Is those talking points? But again, when
but we're playing games now.
No, we're
but that's not when Ukraine broke its neutrality.
That's the road. That is the start of it. But Russia is continuing. Russia is joining the international. Russia's in the process of joining the.
But in 2009, okay. But if that's the road to joining NATO, and Ukraine and Russia felt threatened by Ukraine joining NATO, then why in 2009 would they make a joint statement with the U.S. That the Budapest Memorandum, that the security guarantees in the Budapest Memorandum, which is the memorandum where Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons, right? Why would they make a joint declaration with the U.S. in 2009, 7 years after the road to NATO started? If they felt threatened with Ukraine joining NATO,
because that's when
that's the reasoning.
Because that's when we're trying to have the policy reset under Obama, where we're trying to reset global relations with Russia. When Hillary Clinton famously prints out the reset button box and actually prints the wrong word on it, that was meant to be as a sign of good faith. Because it's not until after that specific period that we say that Ukraine will one day be welcomed into NATO. Which when we were talking about NATO having the dialogue plan and the action plan, we were still at that point giving the Russians assurances that we weren't going to bring we weren't going to bring Ukraine into NATO. Because also,
okay, but can we be really clear though that like the 2002 stuff was not the reason, did not break the neutrality agreement of the Budapest Memorandum.
That's the start of it. You can't say that the action plan to get them into NATO isn't the start of the process where Russia's warning about NATO. We then later say, hey, we're moving it in, etc. Because also,
but again, why would they literally put out a joint agreement that the Budapest Memorandum stands if that is what broke their neutrality agreement?
Because at that point, Russia's still talking about trying to join NATO.
Okay, but then definitionally, that did not break the neutrality agreement of the Budapest Memorandum.
Does it? Okay, is that a thing where where you can say that it was broken at this exact moment? No, but it's the roadmap to it being broken.
I feel like that's pretty important.
Is it?
That's literally what your whole argument hinges on. Yes, that is very important.
It's not what my whole argument hinges on.
It is because NATO expansionism is the reason that Ukraine broke its neutrality agreement, which is why Russia should not, honor its security guarantees in the Budapest Memorandum.
So I guess my question for you is, at the time Russia invades in 2014, after the Ukrainian government was couped by the American CIA through a color revolution, would you consider Ukraine to still be a neutral actor at that point?
I would have to see what the neutrality agreement in the Budapest Memorandum says. Like, what does neutrality mean under the context of that security guarantee?
Let's save this. Send me the thing you're talking about where Russia confirms the Bucharest Agreement.
Sure.
Yeah. So following the joint regarding the expiration of the Treaty of Reduction and Limited Strategic Offensive Arms.
I'm trying to like actually pull up the Budapest Memorandum because I really want to know what this neutrality agreement is.
Fulfillment of these states of their obligations under the Protocol to the START Treaty and their ascension to the NPT as non-nuclear states strengthened their security, which was reflected inter alia in the Budapest Memorandum in 1994. In this connection, confirmed that the assurances recorded in the Budapest Memorandum will remain in effect after December 4th, 2009.
To be honest, I'm starting to think this Budapest Memorandum isn't even real. I can't find it.
George Washington University, National, what is it? Archives of George.
Send me a link if you got it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the full thing. It's where they have all the cables. It's Jeffrey Sachs quotes it all the time, but it's like it's one of the best because it's literally just an archive of all that stuff. So you're not like at the maybe national security, but you're not at like the whims of like the search engine optimization. In this connection, the United States of America and Russian Federation confirmed the assurances recorded in the Budapest Memorandum will remain in effect after 2009. So it's weird. So they had 17 years seems like a weird number to stick on, right? Or 15 years. That makes more sense. Because it's the START Treaty, which is the nuclear non-proliferation agreement, essentially the reduction.
Right.
Non-proliferation treaty is nuclear weapon states, strengthening security, which was reflected inter alia. But again, though, the crux while we're trying to find that, the crux of the argument there isn't is Russia morally justified and etc. It's that we knew going in what pushing it was going to eventually lead to the point that Obama officials are on the record talking about trying to peel Ukraine away from Russia without starting an actual war, knowing that there was a high likelihood that it could start a war, and we did it anyway. To the point where if it's so morally justified to help to push Ukraine to defend themselves regardless of the cost of their civilians, then why was it Obama's point that in 2014 he didn't equip the Ukrainians because he knew that this is his quote that there's nothing that the end result is going to be the end result. The only difference is going to be the casualties.
What was his justification at the time for not honoring the security guarantee of the Budapest Memorandum?
That's actually a good question. I'm sure it's got to be in there.
Because like that's what I really don't understand is like we literally signed a security guarantee in 94 with Ukraine that we would protect them, that in exchange for them giving up their nukes. We again reaffirmed this security guarantee in 2009 with Russia, right? And then Russia is the one that invades Ukraine, right? And then the argument is that we instigated the war and shouldn't honor our security guarantee. Like, I don't understand.
Well, no,
like, it seems pretty cut and dry that we literally signed the security guarantee for them to give up their nukes. And then one of the sides that signed the security guarantee invaded them. And the other side then shouldn't honor its security guarantee?
So, but again, though, when you say so, the security guarantee, we're not going to send troops in to defend Ukraine. Like, period, right? Like that's the argument. Like you're not arguing that we should. I take it, right? That we shouldn't go into global conflict with the Russians.
Correct.
Okay. So then anything short of that, we're not helping them defend themselves. We're just prolonging their misery. Is the argument. Because now you can say like, hey, Russia should pay a cost, but then what you're saying is that we should pay that cost with the credit line of Ukrainian lives. Because no matter what happens, unless we're willing to send in the 34th Airborne, Russia is eventually going to win that war.
Well, so this is where I really would like to find this Budapest memorandum, because I would like to know what are the specifics of the security guarantee and what is the specifics of this neutrality clause.
Yeah, and
right?
especially the Obama thing too, though. You actually bring up a really good point, because you know what though, it's got, dude. So here's it. Okay, so here's some homework for us for later to circle back on this. There's no way that the Republicans in 2014 weren't screaming from the rooftops that Obama is a weakling and a pussy for not arming or for not helping the Ukrainians, right? Like there's got to be some.
Yeah, I mean, it was the
there's-
right wing position forever to be anti-Russian, right?
Well,
and especially anti-Obama.
Well, and especially like there's got to be John McCain and Lindsey Graham quotes.
Right. Wish I could just find this document.
I mean, it is a little suspect that you can't find it, right? Like that's a little bit of a weird thing. Like you think that would be in response to his
the name of this video is the Brofessors can't find the Budapest memorandum.
Look, the one thing we can agree on is this is fucking weird. Like this,
yeah.
This is a major policy that was like a. I mean, it's got to be part of like the larger thing, because I mean, I am. Well, because I mean, it's also interesting. So I mean, okay, so here's a quote from the head of Germany at the time. You can shout as much as you like that the Budapest Memorandum is a worthless piece of paper, but Ukraine signed this silly letter and considered it sufficient to give up its nuclear weapons.
Ooh, I think I might have found it.
All right. Oh yeah, send that to me. Let's see. Is that?
I asked my good friend ChatGPT. Give me a couple of links here. I'll see how credible this is.
Treaties UN usually.
So that's the two links it shot out to me.
Wikisource. What the fuck is Wikisource?
Say Wikisource sounds like some conspiracy theories. Wikisource sounds like I should be able to find QAnon conspiracies.
What are the two languages it's in? Oh, I hate to be that guy. Do you see what languages Wikisource is in?
Well, Well, I mean, that does make sense, though. That is probably where you would find the Budapest Memorandum.
Yeah, I suppose so.
And it's Russian, is what he's saying. But
Say what?
said Russia is the language you're talking about for all
Well,
of those.
it's Russia and Ukrainian. I'm pretty sure that's the two forms of Cyrillic. I'm pretty sure that's Russian and Ukrainian, but I'm not. I don't know if there's a difference in the Russian alphabet to the Ukrainian alphabet, to be quite honest, but they're both in Cyrillic.
Wait, are you telling me you haven't even been to Ukraine?
Dude, that is just such a that's just
the new meme.
Just like the level of like bravado with it, where it was just like, oh, there's a lot of like, I'm gonna have to go back and be curious about it. Like, maybe the trans people should get to play sports. Like, was I just taking that accent like at fucking face value? Like, like, should they get to use the same bathrooms? I don't know.
Yes, they probably should. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Every time someone shows me that there's no reason a transgendered woman can't play sports with like a normal woman, I just send them the fucking video of the transgender lady playing volleyball and just spikes a ball that ruptures someone's fucking cervical, like it ruptures their C2 and like knocks her unconscious. What's fucked up about it is I watched that video no less than 400 times laughing before I found out she was like really, really hurt. So I've gone too far. I've gone too far.
Wait, is this an argument pro trans in sports? Because it sounds like you're getting a lot of enjoyment. I mean, it sounds like it's way more entertaining.
Dude,
I mean, sports is for entertainment, right?
Well, not when women play it.
Got him.
Oh, it changes the one.
Yeah, I don't see anything about neutrality in here. Like, I literally Control F, can't find the word neutral.
I mean, the one link is only 6 numbers, right? There's only 6 pieces.
Yeah.
I feel like there's got to be a term sheet, because there's no way that a treaty that involved this many countries was 6 line items and less text than a parking fucking.
Damn, maybe they just did it better in '94. I don't know. Well, it says, okay, so the Russian Federation, the United Kingdom of Great Britain, and Northern Ireland, there's no problem there, and the United States of America reaffirmed their commitment to Ukraine in accordance with the principle of the CSCE Final Act to respect the independence and sovereignty and the existing borders of Ukraine. So what is the CSCE Final Act? Honestly, that sounds like the CSCE Final Act sounds like a finishing move in an anime.
Yeah. In accordance with the principles of the CSCE to respect the independence. Yeah, that'll otherwise be used in self-defense or otherwise in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations. Wait, why does this say Great Britain and Northern Ireland? Northern Ireland is Great Britain.
I don't know.
That's weird, right? That's because and this is after the Good Friday Accords, I think.
So the CSCE is the U.S. Helsinki Commission, the Helsinki Final Act? Okay, so the CSCE is the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe.
Okay, and I'm finding legitimately nothing on why Obama didn't have anything to do. Budapest.
What's funny about this is I feel like we yelled at each other for like an hour and a half about like our feelings, and then we actually started researching what happened, and we're like, wait, what the fuck happened?
December 5th marks the 30th anniversary of the... All right, well, I'm reading something from Stanford about myths about it. So let's see if neutrality is a myth in there. Trilateral process, U.S. and British commitments, keeping nuclear weapons at what cost, conclusion. But I do think that just undeniably, if you have weapons, you shouldn't give them up. Is unfortunately the real, true, undeniable moral of these stories, right? Like Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, Ukraine. Seems
yeah,
like
no. If you're Kim Jong Un,
no, dude.
You never give up your nukes.
Well,
right?
that was.
It's a terrible precedent to set. Like,
it is, but that's dude. That was the Michael Bolton thing when Trump filed Bolton because he was like, I'd like to see this go the way of the Libya process, and then it's like everybody knows that Muammar Gaddafi got sodomized by a knife. Like that's a problem.
Damn. Okay. So now I'm gonna be very clear. I'm using ChatGPT on this, so this could be wrong. Fact check me.
It could be a hallucination.
But I just flat out asked it. I was like, was there a neutrality component to the Budapest Memorandum, right? And so I think as we both like read the Budapest Memorandum, since it's only like 4 pages, does not contain a formal neutrality clause. Does not explicitly prohibit Ukraine from joining alliances like NATO, and nor does it require Ukraine to remain neutral. But it says, however, there's a breakdown of the relevant context and what the memorandum does say. And then there's another section, and that's basically just talking about what it was. And then there's another thing here that's like, was neutrality implied or expected? And it says some Russian officials have later argued that there was an implicit understanding that Ukraine would remain outside of NATO or Western military structures as part of the Cold War security agreement.
That makes sense based on the
however, that understanding was never codified in the Budapest Memorandum. The memorandum includes no reference to military alliances or restrictions on Ukraine's right to choose its own foreign policy or security alignments. And in fact, one of the 10 principles of the memorandum is the right, or was it? In fact, one of the 10 principles the memorandum builds on from the Helsinki Final Act is the right of states to choose their own alliances. So I think essentially what this is saying, and again, like, fact check me, it's ChatGPT, right? But because the Budapest Memorandum references the Helsinki Final Act, which, did I send you the link for that? Because I do have that as well.
Yeah, I'm looking through that. I think that's the thing I'm looking through right now.
So because it references the Helsinki Final Act, in the Helsinki Final Act, it does specifically say, so sovereign equality, respect for the rights inherent in sovereignty. They also have the right to belong or not to belong to international organization. Wow, that's very explicit. They also have the right to belong or not to belong. I'm not reading ChatGPT anymore, by the way. This is the Helsinki Final Act. And this is, what is this? This is page 2. This is the literally like section 1, part 1, I guess. So like 1 of 1. Sovereign equality, respect for the rights inherent in sovereignty. And then towards the end of that, the second paragraph, they also have the right to belong or not to belong to international organizations, to be or not to be a part, sounds like Shakespeare, to be or not to be a party to bilateral or multilateral treaties, including the right to be or not to be a party of treaties of alliances. They also have the right to neutrality. So, like, it is absolutely explicitly stated in the Helsinki Final Act that is referenced by the Budapest Memorandum that as a sovereign nation, they have the right to belong or not to belong to international organizations and to be a part of bilateral or multilateral treaties. I feel like that's like as explicit as you can get.
So Budapest Memorandum signed 1994.
Yeah, the Helsinki Final Act is from 73.
Okay.
Like that's a smoking gun if I ever heard of one.
Well, so I mean, so that's the question though. So that's from Helsinki in 73. This is signed 94. Now I just want to go look up the cables though and see, because if we
but remember that the CSCE Final Act that it's referring to in the Budapest Memorandum, that is the Helsinki Final Act. That is what it's referring to.
So that's 1970, which is saying that hey, they have the ability to join stuff. But if we
no, but it's in 94, it's saying that like they are agreeing with the principles of the Helsinki Final Act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now
that is point one of the Budapest Memorandum.
Yeah. So now what I'm curious about is, were we telling them behind the scenes that hey, it's not going to be NATO, but they have the rights to join other things, like for example the EU? Which, I mean, again though, if that's so blatant, because I'm looking at line 5.
Right, that's crazy blatant. Yeah.
Why? So what's the deal with Obama then? Like why is that a thing? Like why? You know what I mean?
Weird. I don't know.
So, but I am curious about this though. When was the Budapest Memorandum? 94. Who's president?
I'm going to be honest. I feel like we actually made progress on understanding this topic.
Who's president of Russia in 1994? Is it still Yeltsin? Boris Yeltsin.
I think it's Yeltsin, yeah.
So he's president from 91 to 99. So, because Yeltsin does his 2 terms. Okay, when was the first? Oh, and then 5 years later is when the first tranche of NATO expansion goes on. Like that's when you get the post-Cold War, you get the Cold War ones. All right, so now what we need to look up is specifically the cables. If when around the time of the Budapest Memorandum, even though it wasn't codified, if we were signaling, hey, we're still not going to be putting anyone into, because 94, that's Clinton already, right? Yeah, because it's Clinton, then Bush, then Obama.
Yeah, because Clinton was 92.
Yeah, 92, 2000. So yeah, because now that's the curiosity, because it's like because it's not codified, but if the argument is that hey, we said that we wouldn't join in, are we still making that claim in 94 when we're trying to sign this? Because under Yeltsin, that's when we opened McDonald's in Moscow. That's when we were in that's when Jeffrey Sachs is in Moscow, and we're trying to help them, like we're trying to retool their economy, Well,
that's why I think that 2009 joint statement is so important, right? Because it reaffirms the treaty in the Budapest Memorandum in 94 in 2009.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from there. But I mean, the question is though, is if in 2009 Russia's still like relatively weak, like bouncing out of that. So, in their thing, is this just like hey, we have no choice but to agree with it as we're expanding back out of it. But I am curious if we were saying, hey, we're not going to expand countries into NATO. We're in the process. Oh, and you know what? In 94, that's also when we're negotiating to give Russia that loan for their economic development.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Even if there's cables behind the scene, like even if I grant all of that, which like we'll have to look into it, obviously, but because I haven't looked into the cables.
Well, but now, yeah.
But even if there's like there's cables that are like, yeah, we won't expand NATO, and it's kind of a handshake deal, right? Like the fact that it's so explicitly stated, that Ukraine as a sovereign nation has the right to join multilateral treaties, right? Like that seems pretty cut and dry, even if there's sort of handshake deals happening behind the scenes.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, if the argument is like, hey, they can join trade associations, etc., they're not going to join a military alliance against you. But also, at the time of '94,
But shouldn't that have been argued in the memorandum if that was going to be a red line?
at the time of '94, Russia's joining the international community, which again is like is the Jeffrey Sachs thing. It's like in '94, we have economic advisors there. We're trying to help them retool from communism to capitalism, and then they end up landing on oligarchy. And we actually, like in a weird way, help facilitate their oligarchy, which is like a lot of people don't remember, but we essentially help put Putin in power. We help him consolidate power, and then we even back him when he starts bombing Chechnya.
Was Putin in 2009?
In 2009, yeah. Yeah, Putin goes in. Putin comes in at the same time Bush does, which is why there's that famous George Bush quote where he's like, "I've looked into his eyes. He's got a good soul." Like that whole thing. So it's like like George Bush, not really one for bad judgment. So I mean, you missed a couple of balls, but
yeah, that's right. Because because Putin was 2000 to 2008, and then again 2012 to forever.
Yeah. But that's kind of the curious part.
So Putin actually was not in power in 2009. He basically was. It was his puppet, right?
No, he transferred all the powers of the presidency to the prime minister and was prime minister. And then when he became president again, his puppet transferred them all back to him. So
yeah, exactly. Because technically it was Dmitry Medvedev, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing correctly.
I want to say it's Medvedev. Who that guy was supposed to be the great reformer of Russia, but this is also like the interesting one. So we go in and we bomb the Caucasus for Serbia and Bosnia and all that, and Russian approval of America at the during Yeltsin and during Moscow and McDonald's was 88%. It was like the approval the opinion of of America in Russia was higher than it was in America. And then we bombed Serbia, and then it dropped by half. And that also was how Putin became that's also when Putin ended up absorbing the mantle of strongman, because as soon as we started bombing the neighborhood, that's when people kind of adopted and wanted that, as weird as it sounds.
So I guess why would Putin? Why would he agree to the joint statement in 2009?
Oh, it's Nord Stream. 100% it's Nord Stream. Because that's the thing is at that point, Obama comes in. Obama's trying to reestablish good diplomatic relations with Russia. They're trying to go through all that. Hillary Clinton has gives them the reset box and etc. And in that process, and then you also have to remember, so we're coming out of the global recession in 2008. Angela Merkel hardcore pushed for normalization of ties with Russia and for Germany to be powered by cheap Russian fossil fuels. And so in the rapid expansion of Germany's economy is based on.
So you're saying Putin signed the 2009 joint statement to to basically honor the 94 Budapest Memorandum in order to
extend the nuclear to extend the non-nuclear proliferation treaty, because that's what this is part of. But I guarantee you, if we look at this time frame, it's got to be about the Nord Stream pipeline, because when was Nord Stream 1?
Yeah, because this very explicitly says, in this connection, the United States of America and the Russian Federation confirm that the assurances recorded in the Budapest Memoranda will remain in effect after December 4, 2009.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's not another time frame on it, right? They're just saying it's ongoing. But yeah, so it had
that seems super crazy explicit.
Yeah, and again though, at this point,
I literally don't think it could get more explicit.
Yeah, no, like I said, the only thing I could see on the side is that if the argument is that inside all of these cables we're promising them that it's not that NATO that Ukraine's not going to join NATO, and that memo we're saying is about them joining the EU or getting trade deals, which
But
again
where,
is whatever. But
but
to
yeah,
answer,
even if that's the case, weren't those cables from the night like early to mid 90s, whatever that timeline is, right?
well,
Would be early to mid 90s.
which is when they signed the original
You
accord.
right, Ukraine was already um starting I would have to look into what happened in '02 and '05, what these agreements are with between NATO and Ukraine. But even like, let's take the most generous interpretation on the Russian side. Let's say that those are literally the start of Ukraine joining NATO.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and again, I don't know that that's the interpretation, but let's say that it is.
It's the road work. I
right.
mean, it's the road work. It's the official start of the application. But it's
Sure. And even if that's the case, though,
but also you have to think like
wouldn't Russia already be like worried about NATO expansionism in 2009?
You would think. I mean, there was
Like, it really seems like it breaks that narrative.
well, there was still this possibility that Russia was at one point going to be joining the EU and joining NATO, because really the big shattering is Syria when Russia goes in and backs Syria. Because up until that point, like we were relatively we didn't like what Putin was doing, but we kind of stayed out of our sphere of influence. We treated them the same way we treated Turkey, but it was during the Syrian coup when all of a sudden like we turned like the intensity up on like Putin's evil, Putin's all this stuff. But to answer this other question, Norm Street 1 began operation in November 2011, so it was being negotiated for 4 years prior to that. So when they reaffirm it, they're essentially a year in to the negotiations for Nord Stream, which is like one of the largest pipelines in the world at that point, and one of the most I guess voluminous, because it's literally pumping from Viborg, Russia, into Germany, and it's literally into the heart of Germany's industrial plant. And that's the crazy thing is that gate like if so Germany basically funds Russia and all because Germany basically is then taking that oil and funding their industrial plant and then also passing it out to the other side. Oh wow! And then Russia now famously Russia famously funded all of the green rights groups and anti-nuclear groups in Germany during the Nord Stream negotiations to raise the
That
cost
sounds
of oil.
about right. Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's fucking hilarious. But that's why there was no new nuclear energy in Germany. So the Russians popped that in, but then the Germans got all this cheap stuff, and then during Syria and then the first Ukraine. Oh, okay, that's the answer to your question. That's the answer. It's Europe wasn't going to be at that time willing to deal with cutting Russia off because they literally in 2014 were getting the majority of their energy from Russia. So I mean, that's not what Obama says as to why he's not doing it. But Angela Merkel has several quotes about how we need to handle this intelligently and gently and etc. But that's why. It's because Ukraine is
that's why what? Sorry, it's
that's why we
dying over here.
That's why we don't enforce the Bucharest memorandum, because Russia's providing Germany with essentially and the majority of Europe with all of its energy. And by the time you get to 8 years later, there's like by the time you get to 8 years later, well, one, energy production's still a lot lower. Energy's still a lot cheaper because we're coming out of COVID. Because what was so just fun question. What was the price of oil in 2014? $100. And yeah, so it average price of oil was 98, but it moved from 62 to but it went from 112 to 62. Okay, which is literally the time frame of when we were considering when people were lobbying Obama to not get involved in Ukraine. Oil spikes. When he opts not to, oil drops by half.
So you're basically saying that he goes against the Budapest Memorandum in order to keep energy prices low?
Well, they spike. So I would say it's not accurate to say to keep them low, to bring them back down would be what it looks like to me. Because when do they invade? Because it's June. So in June of 2014, it's 112 a barrel. February and March. So yeah, to bring it back down is where that would be. Would be the argument? Okay, but let's just.
Who's the Ukrainian president that you said was couped by the CIA?
Yanukovych.
Do you have like what's your? I'm not saying you're wrong, but what's your like sourcing on that?
Oh, there's a dozen books on the color revolution. I mean, that's the Victoria Nuland thing. She's on. I mean, one of the best ones is she's on the ground in Ukraine at the time of this, and then there was a call that was leaked that basically had her talking about which person she needs to go in to try and get their foreign policy into play.
I'm going to be very honest with you. Once again, we're using ChatGPT, so let's fact check it. But ChatGPT vehemently disagrees with you, sir.
What does ChatGPT say?
I literally asked it, was Viktor Yanukovych put in power through a CIA coup?
Well, he was taken out of power, so of course that would be inaccurate. If you asked, was he put in power by a CIA coup?
Okay, you're right. So important clarification. 2014 was not a CIA coup either. Says the Euromaidan protests were grassroots, not externally organized. CIA involvement has never been proven, and no credible evidence supports that narrative.
I mean, we know we literally had CIA officials on the ground during the Maidan protests, and we even had a call leaking about how late. All right, let me find the call, because the call is a good one. But during the Maidan uprising, Nuland made appearances supporting the Maidan protesters in 2023. She made a speech in the Ukraine that the U.S. invested over $5 billion. Let's see here. Yeah, because I need to find the call, because it's pretty damning, because I remember when this came out.
I mean, ChatGPT is basically flat out saying that this narrative is Russian propaganda.
Yeah, I question the argument that we know that the former head or former CIA deputy director and State Department member was on the ground giving people money and working stuff out, and even had a look. Ask ChatGPT if it has anything on the leaked phone call from Victoria Nuland during the Maidan protests.
Was it Victoria Nuland?
Yeah, Nuland. Yeah, the Nuland Pyatt, Pyatt call.
Apparently. Okay. So Victoria Nuland calls one of the most widely discussed and controversial moments of the U.S. diplomatic activity during the Euromaidan uprising in Ukraine. Became a touchstone for conspiracy theories about U.S. involvement in Ukraine's internal politics, though the actual contents and context paint a more nuanced picture.
Does it give you the transcript of the phone call?
No.
All right. Well, here's the call where she literally the leak is literally she literally starts with, "I think we're in play."
Let's say the most famous quote is "fuck the EU." So how it became public. So I'm just going through this. So the participants, Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Piat, which is the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasia Affairs, and then Piat is the U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine at the time. Takes place in early February 2014 at the height of the protests. Became public when it was leaked online on February 4th, likely intercepted by Russian intelligence and leaked as part of an information operation to discredit U.S. involvement in Ukraine. The conversation is mostly diplomatic strategizing between Nuland and Piat about how to support a political transition in Ukraine amid the ongoing protests. Said the most famous quote is "fuck the EU." This remark, said in frustration, was about perceived EU hesitancy to act decisively in resolving Ukraine's political crisis. Caused a media firestorm. Led to the U.S. publicly apologizing to the EU. So they do say that they favor Yatsenyuk as someone experienced with economic issues in government. They express skepticism about Klitschko. They discuss how Ole Tianbach, a far-right nationalist, should stay on the outside for now.
They're basically discussing who should be running this country.
Sure. I mean, isn't that what the ambassador to Ukraine should be talking about?
Who should be running their country after a coup?
Well, I feel like you're really adding the coup part here. Like, there was literally, like, an election going on amid giant protests, right? Of course they're discussing the election. So why was it controversial? The call gave the impression the U.S. was deciding Ukraine's future leadership, fueling narratives that the West orchestrated regime change. Apparently it's politically embarrassing because they said fuck the EU. But you agree with fuck the EU, right? Isn't that?
Mm-hmm.
And then Russia seized on the crawl to promote the idea of a Western-backed coup. So, analysis. Was this a smoking gun for a coup? Yeah, this is ChatGPT, fact check me. Mm-hmm. No. While the U.S. clearly had preferences and strategic interests, the call did not direct events on the ground, did not include any discussion of armed overthrow or covert operations, reflected normal, if candid, diplomacy, particularly in moments of crisis. The U.S. State Department later confirmed the authenticity of the call, but emphasized that it showed no inappropriate actions, only an effort to support a peaceful resolution. Broader implication, the leak was one of the first major examples of modern information warfare.
So that's the actual transcript of the call.
Yeah, so I guess how do you go from like, so clearly the US had an interest in who it wanted to be in power, mm-hmm. Correct? So how do you differentiate between this is who we want in power versus we have committed a CIA coup?
I mean, we were literally sending funds to help fund the protest, and we know that because of the disclosures from USAID.
Do you have that?
Mm-hmm. Got to pull up Mike Benz.
And so, I mean, even if I grant you that,
Mm-hmm.
is that a CIA coup?
USAID has long been known to be the NGO arm of the CIA and the State Department. Like that's literally one of the things that when we were talking, like when the stuff came down, that some of the like State Department Republicans were complaining about. Like that's how we use NGOs to push our policy across the world. But we literally were funding media companies and things of that nature to push to push a protest that eventually led to the ouster of a democratically elected president, which is a coup inside of Ukraine.
So supporting.
Through
Interesting. Okay. So what you're saying is that if there's proof that a country is using funds to manipulate an election, that's a coup.
well played.
Isn't this the Russian? Isn't this the Russian narrative about like the 2016 election?
Well, that wasn't during an election. That was during a sitting president that was then pushed out through through widespread protests, which were influenced through a through a foreign power. That's not they put money in and tried to influence an election. That was they caused global calamity inside the nation and then kicked out a democratically elected president.
Okay, so what's the evidence that we funded the protests?
I mean, we had a deputy director
And
of the State Department
Ukraine
on the ground. What's it called?
Ukraine did hold an election in 2014, but you're saying that was after they ousted the president.
That was after the ouster of Yanukovych, because they do that and then
But the time of the call, Yanukovych had already fled the country.
Yeah, and then the first thing that she says inside that call is, "We're in play."
Okay.
So
That's proof of a CIA coup?
So a lady that works for the State Department is specifically on the ground handing out cookies during a protest and funding opposition media during this process, is connected to the CIA and the State Department.
Okay, so the United States has invested more than $5 billion to help Ukraine achieve its. So this is in 2013. Victoria Nuland herself stated in a public speech, the United States has invested more than $5 billion to help Ukraine achieve its democratic goals and develop institutions that ensure a good form of governance. Is that what you're talking about?
No. There's stuff that's the actual Maidan protest. The actual Maidan protest is a proven color fucking revolution.
Did you send me a link? I see the transcript.
The Euromaidan. Benz. Hold on, I'm trying to get there's a specific collation of all of the USAID stuff that because that's the thing is it's all of this from USAID is on the website, and you can literally see the things that we were sending and spending money that we were directly using to fund NGOs that were specifically trying to oust Yanukovych.
Okay, so did Yanukovych leave due to military force, or like why did he leave?
The protests. Like, do you like? Have you seen videos of the Maidan protests?
You know,
These are
I'm building the argument here. So
these are
why? So
large.
what?
These are large scale violent protests that also we set like they set like that's another time where we settle an agreement with Yanukovych through like with the EU where they're basically saying, hey, we'll hold an election, we'll do this, we'll go with that, and then they basically sign it and start and then ignore it, and then a whole full scale protest starts again.
But didn't Yanukovych fled on his own accord, right? Like he wasn't forced out.
He was he was forced out because of the violent upheaval in the country, like the violent protest, because it's the like as I was saying, like if you watch videos of the of the protests, these are not like peaceful protests.
Were they
These are
violent towards him?
yeah, absolutely. They were violent riots. Like shit's on fire.
And they were specifically trying to attack him.
They were specifically trying to overthrow the government. Which again
Sure.
is the pattern of the color revolutions that occurred in the other post-Soviet countries.
I mean, I'm gonna need some proof that the US was the one that backed and started these violent protests if we're going to call it a CIA coup.
Yeah, I'm digging. I gotta find the Benz list because they basically have all the line items. And also, we were previously under Obama talking about how we were doing everything we could to peel Ukraine away from it. So now,
All right. Why don't we do
this in
this?
effect?
Why don't we do this?
Oh, it's 5:30.
It is 5:30 in the morning and your boy needs to go to bed. So why don't we pick up on the next video with the 2014, we'll do a breakdown of the 2014 Euromaidan protests and debate whether this was a CIA coup or not.
When did we start? At 2? Oh yeah, we started at 3, so we are 2 hours and 10 minutes into this. All right, yeah, let's cut it here.
So